Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight's show. We're going to talk a little bit about the summer programs for the Global Navigator High School Study Abroad for summer 2021. Everyone's super excited as we look towards the summer. We want to understand and show enthusiasm for what has potential to be a summer of opening up and really seeing the world as it's transformed and is reformed as it comes out of the global pandemic. So we're all excited about that. We're going to here to give you details. Tonight's panel is Dr. Jim Pello. He's the president and CEO. Next slide, please. He's the president and CEO of CIEE. He's going to talk a little bit. Bill Bull, the Vice President of Risk Management. My name is Matt Redman. I'm the Vice President of High School Study Abroad, and we have Laura Kavanaugh, the Director of Program Management for High School Abroad Programs here at CIEE. So we're all going to talk a little bit, provide you a little bit of perspective, and it's going to be a great time. Next slide, please. On our agenda today, we're having this call tonight not to brief on small details. We're unfortunately not able to tell you what will run, what will not run, and what hiccups there may be, what to watch out for. We'll talk a little bit about that, but details are changing, as I'm sure you've observed in the world today. It's not something that's easy, but we are working to provide you insight into our decision-making systems, our monitoring systems, how we decide what will run, what will not run, and help you understand that student safety and student experience is the most important part of the work we do at CIEE. So we're here to demonstrate that and to show you how we think about things. The format of the meeting is we're gonna talk a little bit. We're gonna give you some presentation details. All of your questions should please be entered into the question and answer, and we will follow up at the end of the program. There will be plenty of time for questions. We've allotted that primarily so that we can make sure that we speak. If you can please enter questions into the question and answer. Please watch the questions and answers too. You should be able to vote on questions that you want to hear answers, especially to. That will help us to know what to focus on during the verbal part. Any questions that we don't get to, we will address and send out answers on. You have to enter your information to be able to enter information into the questions and answers so that we can respond to you. Otherwise, we don't know who to respond to. So there will be lots of time at the end to talk about questions for programs, processes, and needs. So we thank you very much. We will not be addressing specific individual application questions. We know there's a deadline coming up at the end of the week. And so we're not here to answer those specific small questions. If you have a question about your individual application, please call our team and we will answer those questions. So I'd like to turn it over now to Dr. Jim Pello to talk about summer.
Great, thank you, Matt. And good evening, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're calling in from. It's a thrill to have you join us. We're very excited. So many decided to attend. Looks like the count is over 400 students and parents on with us tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome you this evening and to share just general macro parameters and highlights around our programs. We're really excited about the summer 2021. Like you, we're reading the reports across America carefully. We also get reports on a regular basis from around the world, from all of our study centers and the health organizations around the world. The vaccines are here, they're rolling out. It's a little choppy in certain parts of the world, but we're very confident that by the summer, the world will have healed enough that many, if not all of our programs will be able to run. We say that because we're actually continue to support hundreds of study abroad and international student exchange programs even today. We were supporting students over the summer. We were supporting last summer. We were supporting students in the fall. And here we are at the beginning of a new spring season. And we have students in our country, in America, from Europe, attending high school programs with host families across America. We have interns, foreign students in this country on internship programs. And we have many high school and college American students overseas, in Europe, in Latin America, and in Asia. So smaller numbers than we're used to. As many of you know, we're the oldest and largest nonprofit study abroad organization in the country. So our numbers, like most travel experiences, are down, but we're surprised at the resiliency of student demand and of interest on the part of both students and parents. And we're also amazed with our staff around the world that can embrace and adapt the new health procedures and health protocols that are required. We're considered the leader in that. You're going to hear later from our health and safety experts, and they're going to walk you through how we measure risk and how we evaluate risk in each and every location. In the same way that here in the US, we evaluate risk state by state and city by city with mayors and governors working together to keep us all safe. So you're going to hear a lot about that. You're going to hear a lot about the programs. I see already in the chat box, there's lots of questions around whether programs are going to run or whether refunds and financial protection will be in place. The answer to the first is we don't know. Honestly, we just don't know, just like we don't know exactly what's happening here with the virus. But we suspect, based on our indicators, that things will be pretty solid for the summer. We fully expect that many, if not all of our programs will run. But we'll keep you posted throughout the months. And again, you'll hear a little bit more detail about that a little bit later. And then with respect to the financial protection, the general answer is yes. In terms of commitments, we're going out of our way to make sure that no students or parents are harmed financially. Laura is going to touch base on that a little bit later, or we'll answer your questions in detail. One of the things that we learned as being the largest supporter of international student programs last year, when the coronavirus first began to roll across the world, as the largest provider, we had the most students out on programs in 65 locations around the world, over 4,000 students. And we were able to keep them all safe, get them all home, keep them protected, and actually help them complete their programs if they were college students. We learned a lot from that, and one of the things we learned is how to be flexible. And you'll hear a little bit about that also in the program tonight, how we, one of the benefits of working with CIEE is that we work in so many different cities that if a program in one location is unable to run because of a health spike of some sort or a spike in risk, we're often able to shift that program to another location that is safe and where travel and visas are in place and allowed. So that's one of the benefits of working with a group as large as CIEE. So with that, I'm going to close my remarks by repeating my welcome and my excitement. I'm going to stay on the phone and pay attention to the questions and answers that come through tonight and do my best to contribute to answering some of the questions. But the folks that really know how these programs work are the folks you're about to meet. They run programs for thousands and thousands of students every year, and they're going to walk you through an overview of CIEE today in our programs. So I'm going to kick it over to Laura Kavanaugh, and thank you very much once again for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Jim. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. We're so happy to have everyone here. I work with you, all of you, parents and students, to get your questions answered before you guys travel abroad, hopefully this summer. So as you all know, hopefully our final deadline to apply for a scholarship for this summer is this Friday night, 11:59 p.m., July 15th. So I've worked at CIEE for over 10 years, and this deadline and this week is always a very intense week for us. It's very busy. We are actively on the phone, emailing, working with each and every one of you to try to get your questions answered, to get your applications in. But it's super exciting because we know what's on the other side. We see year after year thousands of students travel with us on scholarships or not, and they have amazing life-changing experiences, and we want that for you. So we're super excited, and I just want to encourage you to not miss out on this opportunity. I know there may be a few procrastinators in this group, but finish your application, log in, and get things done so that we can review your application and hopefully award a lot of scholarships this year. We have $5.4 million in scholarships to share with each of you, all of you, some of you, but it won't happen if you don't apply. So please get your applications in. Already we have around 1,200 students who are confirmed from last summer that are now going to be traveling with us this summer. So we want to add you and your families to this group so that we can all get ready to travel together in the coming months. I know many of you have questions around what programs will run, which ones will not run, and then what will happen, if CIEE does end up canceling a program this summer. So if we do end up canceling your program, and you have received a CIEE Global Navigator Scholarship for that program, we will honor it for 2022. So again, that's if CIEE cancels your program. We will honor the scholarship that you were awarded for this summer to next summer. If you change your mind or decide you don't want to go this summer, unfortunately, you would forfeit the scholarship. So the next steps with your applications, the deadline's this Friday, and then it will take us a bit of time to get through all the applications, to read everyone's essays and to review everything. We have actually an external panel, teachers and educators who help us review applications and help us score and identify scholarships. So the announcements about who got a scholarship and how much it's for will go out probably around mid to late February. So there is a little bit of time in there that you'll need to wait to find out. But that's okay, because this year we are kind of delaying some of the tasks that we would typically be telling people to do very soon, like booking your flights. We're asking people just to hold off and delay by a few weeks or a month, so that we can make sure that the future is looking bright in your specific location and we're ready for you to travel. And then we will give you instructions about how to book flights, how to pay, and we'll also roll out a pre-departure Canvas course for you to engage with your peers, to learn all about what will happen on the program and how to get ready, learn about cultural differences, learn about what to pack. And that will happen in an online Canvas course, self-paced, and you can also engage with your peers in that group and meet your center staff. So that will be rolled out to you in late March. And then there's other important tasks like going to the doctor to get your health forms complete, making sure you have a passport that's valid for 6 months after your program ends, and then deciding if you're on a language program, do you want to enroll in college credit, and then making final payments. So there's lots to do, but the first step is getting your applications in, getting your questions answered, and then awards will go out mid to late February. So the next few slides will be covered by Bill Bull, who is our Health, Safety, and Security Vice President. And then after that, we'll have a question and answer session. So I'm sure we can get into more detail on specifics if Bill isn't able to answer those questions. Thanks, Bill.
Certainly. All right. Thank you one and all for coming. This is great. I will try and keep my comments brief, as important as they are. If you could advance the slides. We're going to walk through the type of monitorings we're doing, how we're doing to keep our students best prepared for success, the types of planning, programming, responses that we have in the health, safety, and security part of the field. And then we'll talk about, Jim alluded to or mentioned that we've been supporting a bunch of students. So we'll talk about how many we've done and what we've seen and what we've learned and the types of things that we're monitoring. So if you could just continue on ahead. Just for everyone's knowledge, one of the things that we publish every other week and have been doing it since April is that we created a health risk index that is a cumulative monitoring of each country's safety framework for how they are progressing with their ability to manage the COVID disease. We know that COVID it's a pandemic, right? We've heard that time and time again. which means that it's everywhere. So the question really for us is not, does COVID exist? Is there a place without it? Well, there really isn't. The question is, how well is each country managing it? How prepared are they? What's their public health response like? What are their capacities doing? And can they successfully manage this? So we've been tracking this, and we can see from this that, this gets published on our website every other week. You guys can check it out, but it's our way of keeping score of what's going on. We also, if you can advance the slide, look at a 2-week snapshot to see where things are, what's been going on in the past 2 weeks in each country. And we do a brief comparison to sort of the select number of states in the US. And that's what this chart is showing. I'm not going to do a dissertation on these charts, but the point being here is, the average of the past 2 weeks in this case is the orange line, and you can see that the vast majority of our countries, this was as of the last week, are significantly below the US. We recognize that, if you're living in Hawaii, you might want to think twice before you go to the Czech Republic. But if you're living in Arizona, I would say the Czech Republic is probably looking pretty promising at this moment. Each country manages the outbreak slightly differently. They have slightly different rules, slightly different standards. And our job and what we monitor in the HSS department here, Health, Safety, and Security, is how they're doing, is it working, and what's going on. If you could go ahead and advance the slide a little more. We overall make sure that we work hard to train all of our students around the stuff. I think at this point, this is common knowledge for all of us, the fundamentals of managing this. We find that it works, and that when physical distancing is at play, and we pay attention to proximity and cleanliness, and we avoid large groups, and we cover with masks, and we make sure there's adequate ventilation, that the risk of contracting COVID-19 goes down. And that's what we can do these days. We can mitigate the risks. We can't eliminate the risks. We operate from, on the next slide, we operate from my favorite slide these days about the Swiss cheese model of this, which is an oldie but goodie for infectious disease and virologists of, it's the cumulative effect of each of these things that collectively add up to a protected individual. And we're clear that we have to have sort of all these things in play, because it's any individual one, like any holes in Swiss cheese, things can pass through. But you add them all together, you add up to a more protected person. And our job is to make sure that these concepts are embedded in how we train our staff to help the students stay safe, and how we train the students to help themselves stay safe, and then how we coordinate with local authorities to fit within their frameworks. Next slide. We do have a response protocol built in place. Should there be an exposure? Should someone test positive? Should someone get an exposure? Should someone have some symptoms? And we're keenly aware that people can have symptoms of COVID and not have COVID, and others may have had an exposure that we need to protect them and protect the rest of the population of our staff and students. So again, I'm not going to go into this, but suffice it to say, we've worked through this closely. We've applied it. It's been effective. So let's talk about what's worked to date on the next slide. Collectively, we have supported, from last summer and fall, 1,674 participants. And if you could advance the slide, that would be great. And currently today, we have 734 participants on our programs right now, and we've got another 400 coming by within the next 3 weeks. We've operated in 15 different countries, and our measures and our protections have worked out pretty well. There had been 4 confirmed positive cases. 2 of them were caught by the on-arrival testing. So 2 students arrived with COVID, but because there was a quarantine and isolation and a retesting process, they were protected, they were safe, they were fine, they didn't infect anyone else. And we did have, unfortunately, out of our 2,400 people, 2 people come down with it. Both managed to recover just fine. They managed to do their schoolwork online. They were supported. Our processes of keeping them supported have been effective. We're going to continue to refine them as we learn more and more happens, but we're pretty confident that things have been working well. We're going to continue to work well. Next slide, please. Collectively, we learned a couple of things as we've run through this. One is sort of a warning, guidance, commandment, suggestion for all of you is, there's going to be some pre-departure instructions that are driven by the airlines as well as the host country where you're going to restrictions and requirements. And we want to be very, very clear that this isn't us making this up. This isn't anything. And we have had students arrive in country and be turned away and returned home because it didn't follow the instructions as they were written. So when we send those out, please pay attention to them. We will have a social contract for students that have them agree to our standards and agree to be responsible for each other's wellness and their own wellness and collectively work together to make sure each of our groups are protected and don't infect each other. And we need every student to agree to that and adhere to that and take it very, very seriously. It helps, which is one of the reasons we've only had 4 cases, 2 of which people arrived with. So effectively on program, we've only had 2 cases out of 2,400 students. If you want to compare this to US campuses, we compare very, 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 very favorably. Part of that has been our students have been stellar and phenomenal, and our expectation is you guys will as well. We've got some other concerns out there, which is, helping you guys understand that, whatever you're doing in your communities, in your state, in your county, and whatever is effective there would probably be effective elsewhere, but we have to fit in and plug into whatever the national strategies is in each country. And we will train each and every student to those standards. And those are the ones we chiefly follow, combined with what we know about the prevention fundamentals. So that's effective for all of us. And then lastly, I'm going to end with, if you could go to the last slide, the things that we're paying attention to. My team is actively monitoring assiduously and continuously the spread and the control measures and the public health response in each of the countries that we are intending to operate. We make sure that we understand what's happening. We make sure that they're effective, that the hospital systems are not overburdened, that they're functioning. Our chief concern is not, is there COVID? We know there's COVID. There's COVID everywhere. Our chief concern is it being managed within the capacity of the public health to make sure that should care be needed, care is available. We will step in if we see the health systems are getting overwhelmed and recommend not to run a program in that location until it gets back under control again. We also track closely the travel realities, and one of the biggest questions right now, and I saw a lot of questions on it, is will vaccines be required? Well, right now, no country is requiring a vaccination. Can I anticipate a scenario that some countries might say, and we require everyone to be vaccinated, all students or all participants or all travelers be vaccinated before they arrive? I can imagine that. We haven't seen it, but then again, we might. If we do see that, we will certainly let you know as soon as we know, and we will research closely what they mean by that and what vaccination, and do they care, and what type of vaccination, and is it available on arrival should it be challenging to get here. But we'll be paying attention that these are the realities that we will continuously follow and follow up on. If there's a change in condition and local conditions that impact our ability to successfully run an interesting program that is viable and entertaining and useful and life-changing, we'll let you know. And we never knowingly want to put anyone in harm's way, but we do want to make sure that you're informed of the risks that you assume when you travel. They say the risk is not as much about the location as it is about the traveler. It's each student's actions, attitudes, and behaviors are the best protections out there. So we will work with you. We will continue to monitor this. This is our job and our interest and our passion, and we're ready to step in and answer questions as needed. So having said the word questions, let's go to the last slide, which is we wanted to give ample time to sort of answer any global questions you have, and specific questions I know are being answered as I speak, and we're ready for anything you got, whether it be for Laura or Matt or Jim or myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
And hi, Mary Latka. Sorry, I had to slip that in.
So yeah, that was a lot of great information. I know there's tons of questions coming in here. There's 2 different groups of students on the call right now. Some students are already confirmed for the program or deferred their scholarships from 2020 to 2021. You guys do not need to reapply. You're all set with your scholarship amount. Please just wait till the end of next week, and there will be more tasks for you to start completing in your CIEE account. For anyone new who's applying, for a brand new scholarship, that's the due date is this Friday.
So there was a question out there about, let me talk a little more about the supportive quarantine. One of the things we learned when schools went back into session, certainly our colleges went back to session, was many a student arrived on their campus and were told they had to stay quarantined for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, whatever it happened to be, and they felt abandoned. They felt that their schools and their programs weren't ready for them. So what we mean by supportive quarantine is that we're not going to simply say, go hide there until we feel you're safe to come out. We will check in with the students at least twice a day. We make sure food is taken care of. We respond to their needs. We make sure that we're present if they have to be in quarantine and we're working online. There's online activities that are set up for them, and we make sure that they're not just stuck out there waiting and twiddling their thumbs, that there's an engagement and there's a process that keeps them engaged. So that's what we mean by a supportive quarantine.
One other thing I wanted to mention and clarify about programs running or potentially being canceled for this summer. I talked about if CIEE cancels the program, you would be entitled to a full refund minus the $25 application fee. However, as things start to evolve, if we have to change 2 fundamental pieces of your program, for the language and culture program, it would be homestays and in-person classes. If those 2 core pieces of our program we feel are very important. However, we may need to adapt those due to COVID. And those would be 2 other reasons. If we're promised you a host family, but then in the end we're unable to provide that, that would be another reason that you would be able to defer your program to next summer or potentially receive a refund. So we're trying to be flexible and realistic with the ever-changing world that we live in. And we're committed to running the highest quality, the most amazing, life-changing, and educational programs that we can. But we'll also be, flexible with those 2 core pieces of the program. If those have to change, in-person classes or homestays, either of those are unable to happen, we'll be flexible with you.
So Laura, this is Jim checking in. So there's one general set of questions around money and refunds, which I think you touched on in terms of programs that might need to be canceled due to health or other travel restriction needs. And if anything is canceled, could you explain it one more time for the refund policy and the financial risk that families would have or not have?
Sure. So when you apply to the program this week, if you get a scholarship, that's great. You might get a partial scholarship and then have to pay some type of a deposit. Then let's say you then pay your full program balance and CIEE decides to cancel the program because we don't feel we can safely run in your location, you would receive a full refund, the amount of the program fee that you paid, including your deposit, which is typically non-refundable. However, if CIEE has determined that we feel comfortable running the program in your location and we continue on with that, and you change your mind and decide that you do not want to travel for whatever reason, you would not be entitled for a refund.
Okay, thank you for that. And then there are a lot of questions on the safety, which I think Bill addressed. The big set of questions around vaccines. At this point, we don't see any country requiring vaccines. We're at the early part of the rollout, and we have already 2 vaccines rolling out here in the US. There's likely to be more being rolled out here by the time we get to the summer. And there are different vaccines being rolled out in different countries. What we've learned is every country acts independently. They have leaders who decide based on their experience what the travel restrictions are. And as soon as they're announced, we share them with everyone affected. So the best we can tell you right now is we don't think vaccines will be required, although as Bill points out, they might as they get more mainstream. Some country may decide, hey, we'd like to see people get a vaccine. We do see countries saying we'd like to see a negative test before you can arrive. In fact, the US has just announced a policy for international flights. So as these things change, we'll be the first to send you a note and update you on the implications for your program. The other question, Laura, I want to bounce back to you. There were a bunch of questions, I just scanned through them, around host families and basically care and support and overall security of students on program. And it may be driven in part by what's happening in our country right now, this past week, the events that are unfolding in Washington and some of the tensions around different groups in our own country. So I'd like maybe for you to share how we vet, how we train staff, how we hire staff, how we train them, how we vet host families. I shared a couple of notes myself. Many of our host families have been with us for years, and virtually everyone that works at CIEE embraces our values, which is fundamentally to help bring the world together. But maybe you could add some more color around how students are supported on program, not just in the classroom, but at home families and on excursions.
Yeah, so not every program involves a host family. Primarily, it's our language and culture programs. Our global discovery programs are typically living in dorms or hotels. So with our language and culture host families, you're right, Jim, many of them have been working with CIEE year after year. They love welcoming students into their home. We still have students actively ready to host right now this spring, you know, in the midst of COVID-19, which I think is a real testament to people being committed to study abroad and to establishing connections with American students. They want to learn about America. They want to learn about our culture, and they want to share theirs with you. So they're very committed. The host families come in all shapes and sizes. There could be single women. They could be families with kids. They could be parents without children. In every country, we do background checks on all family members over the age of 18 where it's legal to do so. There are a few countries where that is not legal to do so, and in those countries, like Japan, we ask for references, and we do 2 or 3 reference checks on the family before placing a student in the home. Students will typically pick the CIEE will pick students up at the airport, but then students typically go directly to their host family to be welcomed. They offer 3 meals a day for students. We do have, you know, curfews that we tell host families to follow. We do an extensive training prior to your arrival about the program, the curriculum, and encourage them to help you learn the language and to be kind of a language coach and a supportive guide for you to develop your language skills when you're at home, eating dinner, having breakfast, going out on the weekend for walks and things like that. So host families are very involved in the language and culture program and in your language development. And they take care of you. They text us in the middle of the night and say, I'm worried about Johnny. She has a tummy ache. Let's bring her to the clinic. So they fully embrace the role, and we're in regular contact with them throughout your program.
Great, thanks, Laura.
So there's, Bill here, a number of questions around host families as well, and training of host families, that kind of stuff, and COVID restrictions and COVID realities. And the answer is yes, we work closely with the host families. We have a selection process. They're vetted, background checks, and then we make sure that they understand the needs for space and safety and those sorts of things to keep themselves safe. And not to put too fine of a point on it, certainly you can look around the world and see what's happening with the spread of COVID. And frankly, host families are looking at the US and the US students as a problem to be managing. That, the U.S. certainly has the most number of cases in the world, and depending upon the state, if we were looking at countries as if they were states, Arizona has the highest rate of COVID of any country in the world, the state of Arizona. So our host families are very concerned about accepting students in and making sure that we are training the students and that they themselves are trained in order to keep themselves safe and make sure the students stay safe. So a lot of time is spent on this to make sure that we are ready to do this. And even with these concerns, we keep having families say, yeah, I value this process and I want to have students come on board.
One of the other things is the panel is screening your questions. I'll just jump in and add some color on the host families. One of the nice things about CIEE is that we have host families all over the world in so many different countries, including America. We have over 1,500 host families in the US across the country who host international students each year. And they are guided by the State Department rules and regulations around compliance and safety, as well as our nation and the World Health Association organization's advice on health protocols in response to COVID-19. So what we would do is we try to have it at least the same common experiences around the world to the extent laws provide, and with respect to health and safety, they usually are consistent. And then we go beyond. CIEE is known for going beyond minimum expectations around health and safety. And so the questions you're asking about your son or daughter who perhaps might be in Shanghai or Rome or London or South Africa are the same questions that international parents are asking about their sons and daughters in Kansas and Iowa and Illinois and California and Florida. And our answers are the same. We vet host families carefully. They are trained. They follow a very rigid set of protocols. And they are expected to behave in ways that we all want to behave at home to stay safe. So family units are expected to comply with all of the health compliance and protocols.
Just want to answer a couple questions about flights. So scholarships can cover your program fees, but flights are your responsibility to purchase. So your scholarship would not cover your flight. That's on you to purchase. And CIEE offers group flights chaperoned by a CIEE staff member. We are coordinating those group flights right now and establishing international departure cities and for each location. And we'll be rolling that information out to you in early March. We work with a travel partner called FlightFox. It's an option if you want to go through them, but they have all of our group flight information and they can help you book a flight to your destination with the CIEE chaperone and the CIEE group. If we were to cancel a program, you would then have to work directly with the airline to get a refund for your flight. That would be your task to do. Or if you do book through FlightFox, they're extremely helpful at calling the airline on your behalf and helping you get a refund.
Thank you, Lara. The other thing is Bill's scanning. I see another series of health and safety questions. I'm going to let Bill review them. One of the things I wanted to share tonight is how excited I am about the energy that high school students in particular have for study abroad. Some of you may have learned that we really, because of demand, decided to offer high school students even today. Many of you perhaps are studying at home. Perhaps your school is doing remote learning. We actually started a series of high school away programs that have had incredible demand. So we have students right now taking high school classes. Actually, I'm a week early, right? They go next week. But in the fall, we had students, and we will again in a week, in Costa Rica. And they're actually in a foreign country, Spanish-speaking, rainforest where they study climate change and sustainable science programs. And they swing in hammocks as they take their high school classes. And then in the afternoon, they hike the Continental Divide, or they study butterflies and hummingbirds, or climate change issues with the cloud forest. Working with our staff and scientists in that location. So it's amazing to think that this virus has so disrupted our lives, and yet it's amazing to see how resilient and creative and determined students are to experience a foreign country and embrace an international experience. So the reason we're so confident about this summer is because we're actually right now supporting students all around the world, and we're dealing with all the questions you ask around health and safety and what happens if a child gets sick. Is there healthcare support? How does the healthcare system work? What are the isolation protocols? We're actually practicing that right now with scores of students around the world in multiple locations. So we're really confident that should we be able to travel to the countries where your programs are meant to be offered this summer, that we're going to be able to keep your students, sons and daughters, really safe, and that there will be a robust, vibrant experience for them. Kick it over to Bill for any additional health and safety questions.
Oh, you're muted, Bill.
You're muted, Bill.
Yeah, I coughed. It was just a normal cough, everyone, no panic. So I muted myself. So there are questions around quarantining and will we be requiring quarantining? Will we work with countries that have mandatory quarantining? And the answer is a qualified, definitive yes. And it kind of depends on what the quarantine looks like, how long, and is it mitigated by pre-testing prior to flight? I know that Ireland today announced they require 2 tests, one a week before you travel, one shortly before you travel, and then another test upon arrival. So I'm not going to say we do tea leaf reading. If a country has a 2-week quarantine and we have a 4-week program, no, we're not going to run that. If a country has a mitigation that says it's testing and then a short isolation period followed by a test, I think several places we're operating now, there's a 5-day period of isolation, but let's be clear about what the isolation is. The isolation means you spend most of your time in your room, but not solely or uniquely. You're allowed out. We are doing programs now where while the students are in the quote unquote quarantine period, they're doing walking tours of the city, walking tours of the neighborhood. They're understanding their environment. They're just not allowed to go into stores or into restaurants and that sort of thing until they're continue to be symptom free and then retested. So again, this is where the art and the science of it all, of how we plug and play into whatever country's requirements are. But I will say that we're not going to waste your time and everyone's time to have a student go sit in a room for 2 weeks on a 4-week program. That's no one wants to do that. We wouldn't do that, and we'd say we wouldn't do that to you. But if they've got a shorter quarantine period that we could manage and we can still do activities, we will certainly run.
Bill, there's a good question about a student who asks, if the U.S. now is requiring international travelers to have a negative test, what happens to American students when they want to come back? Do they need a negative to get back in the country?
Yeah, right. So we're also tracking and trying to understand the U.S. systems, structures, and requirements, and it hasn't been an easy task. There's been a fair amount of change, shall we say, there. So should there be a requirement from an airline for you to get a negative test on return home, we will facilitate that happening. Should the U.S. announce that they want this for their citizens returning home, we will do that. But there's some interesting things around sort of rights of citizens and what's happening there. But it's our job to make sure that, we're not going to abandon you. Should you get the U.S. announce a need on Friday, they usually give a few days warning to get tested. We'll help you get the test happening. Just similar to if you were sick and you came sick and you were symptomatic, perhaps positive, perhaps not, and it was towards the end of the program, our duty of care would continue to support you until you are safe to travel. And that's part of what we do. We're not just going to say, oh, it's end of the program, your time's up, I'm sorry, but it's time to go. No, that's That's not responsible, and that's not who we are, and that's not who you want us to be. So we will continue caring for the student and for a child until they're safe to travel, and if there's test needing, we'll make sure they get it.
And Bill is describing as he kind of nods his head. There are so many variables that happen. Each country has a different set of variables, and when you hear news about a ban or a requirement, before you jump to conclusions, the first thing to do is to shoot us a note, because the surface bans are not always accurately interpreted. And we can go all the way back to the beginning of COVID. You remember the travel ban on China was not really a travel ban on China. It was Chinese nationals could not come to the US, but lots of other people could and actually did, including Americans could fly from China to the US. Same with Europe. When the European ban was put in place, it wasn't Americans coming back. It was European nationals. I have a daughter-in-law who lives in families in Mexico. She just came back from Mexico City just a few days ago, and is coached to self-quarantine, which is what she's doing, but she was not restricted to fly. She flew right through Houston, I think was her transfer city, and into Boston. And so she's in self-quarantine right now, but she was not restricted in coming back to the US. So each country, each situation is different, and the best way to get clarity is to shoot us a note, and we'll give you the facts.
Yeah, and we'll work to understand what the language actually says, not necessarily what's reported, because they're different more often than not. And I think we all have seen that happen, where the initial reporting is not actually what the facts are. So I don't mean to be vague. What I mean to say is we will be specific when we can be specific about the specific issue. Right now, we can't. Some of these questions folks are asking about, what will the supportive quarantine be like in Europe in the summer? Well, we don't know yet. We do know we've successfully managed it to date, and so we believe we will manage it come summer as well.
There are a couple of questions in there about for seniors. So students who were juniors when 2020 was canceled, they're now seniors. And the question is, if 2021, it also has to be canceled, what will happen to my scholarship? So we have worked, the donor has generously agreed to transfer those scholars and create a series of freshman programs that would be eligible for scholarships in 2022 in the event of cancellation of 2021. That's only for students who remain confirmed. So if you cancel your scholarship, you will forfeit your scholarship. But if you remain committed to an educational experience abroad and a fun study abroad trip, we can work with you to make sure that that happens, and we will announce that as needed. So that's very good news for that group of students as well. Bill, there are a couple questions about dorms. You talked a lot about homestay families. Is there any way you could touch a little bit about dorms and how we may have to modify or work with dorm programs?
Yeah, so dorm programs, always, we will have them, and we will have students doubled, and we will work with the physical location to ensure separation within the double. That's what we've done in the past. We put a little screen in between the students to ensure there is anything there. We'll make sure that there are chaperones and guides and people on the floor with the students, and we'll make sure that they are supported within the dorm setting. We'll work closely with whoever else is managing the dorm about making sure our students are not, that collectively the dorm itself is following a set of protocols. And this is where it fits into landing upon, in each country, there are standards and requirements for communal living in dorm settings, and colleges and high schools with people staying in the dorms have been going on throughout this process, and they've managed them, and we will comply with their requirements for spacing and distancing and social distancing, as well as masking whenever in public areas.
Thank you.
There's a other question about sort of travel and parent visiting and that kind of stuff. So a couple things. What we have run in the past is that the past since this started in July. We've been running programming. Students who want to travel to another country and parents who want to come over and check in and visit with them and that sort of stuff that has not been acceptable. One of the things we work to do is create these more insular COVID bubbles with our students where they are less likely to have people come into the bubble and expose themselves in their more controlled environments. So if parents want to visit, we ask that they wait till after the program is over. If students want to travel to other locations, again, with their parents or family, that's not during the program, it's after the program. So they can do that, but we do try to sort of maintain program integrity, so we are less likely to have new elements introduced and new exposures for students throughout the program. So it's going to be, you're going to be in a location, you're going to learn more about that location. And frankly, as a longtime traveler, having lived all over the world, I've come to very much appreciate, going to a location and getting to know the ins and outs and the details of the location rather than a cursory overview of what it is of each place. So you'll get some in-depth understanding of the location. My daughter was on the first Wren High School summer program they ran and came back and loved it. And she spent, all of her time there just studying French and Wren. And now she's a sophomore in college and she's off this semester and she's going, I think I can go back to Wren and visit. That'd be so great. I'd like to go spend another couple of months there. So, I mean, this stuff stays with the students.
There were a couple of questions, Bill, about, what if my student gets sick while in the program, with COVID or with something else? Like, can you play out a scenario of what would happen? And then they said, how do you pay for your medical bills?
So students will get sick on our programs. Sorry, I just hope it's not your student. But it happens every semester and it's sort of part of life and we know that. And I did briefly show, we've got a specific protocol for COVID, but we've other protocols for other illnesses. So we will ensure quality medical care. I mean, that's, we've been in each of these locations for years. We know who the best doctors are, the best hospitals. We will ensure that the students get the best available medical care. Our staff will accompany them and make sure they're taken care of. And when it comes to the medical bill and that kind of process, there is the iNext insurance comes along with our programs that will assist with covering some portions of the Medicare, will assist with covering the costs. We always have issues with there's an iNext insurance and then you also have your own insurance as well. So insurance gets slightly complex as you manage both, but the iNext insurance becomes primary when they're traveling, which is the insurance we provide you. So we've identified with iNext, sort of if there's a expensive hospital stay or a treatment that's required, that there is a guarantee of payment that's coordinated with our staff and the hospital and the doctor's office to pay that, to have the insurance pay it directly. Sometimes there is a requirement or the necessity for 10, 20, 50, whatever copay, which we work with you and the students and the families to pay. And then the insurance covers what it covers. I don't know if that answered that well enough or not.
I think you did a nice job, and I'll just jump in as under the heading of, I'm just not working at CIEE, I'm a customer. But two of my kids were on study abroad programs and needed very serious medical attention. I had a son in Santiago, Chile, who was playing with local kids in a Saturday rugby league and received a very serious concussion. He was very well supported by his host family and our staff, and the medical system was excellent, and the insurance was easy to use. And then several years later, I had a daughter in London who had some serious health issues and also needed to use the healthcare system. And again, the London staff was quite supportive. She lived in an apartment, kind of a dormitory, like a college dormitory type of facility. Also received great personal attention, and the medical system worked well, and the insurance was quite easy to use. So as Bill says, it does happen. And we're again, pretty darn good at supporting students on program. So I would as a parent who's had it happen twice, I'm very confident that we'll be able to take care of your sons and daughters. There are a lot of questions around passports and them expiring and when should they get renewed, and that might be a big riddle, and I don't know if we can answer that on this call. I do know that the government prefers to have a 6-month window before the expiration date, generally. I don't know if those protocols have changed any, but can anyone advise families who are looking to get passports lined up?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a question, should I reapply for my passport before I find out about my scholarship award? I mean, that's totally up to you. If you think you'll be traveling someday in the future, then yeah, reapply for your scholarship or your passport, because it is taking a lot longer than normal to get passports renewed. So renewing passports or applying for one as soon as possible is essential to make sure you can travel next summer. The fees associated with that, of course, are your responsibility. So I guess I would just leave that decision up to you. If your passport expires during the program, like you won't be allowed in the country if your passport expires during the program dates, or each country is a little different, but 3 to 6 months after you depart the country is typically when they want to see validity of a passport. So take a look at your passport and look at the program dates, and then make your decision about passport renewal soon.
So the short answer is they're still processing them. There's someone on in the Q&A saying she is having trouble finding a way. They are processing them. So again, give a call or send an email. We'll help you find the link, but it takes a lot longer. We should have plenty of time right now in January for the summer programs, but you want to get at that. And then with respect to where the window, if your son or daughter has a passport that's expiring, I think there was one January of 22, that's right at that 6-month window. Might be okay, but might be worth trying to get that updated just to be on the safe side. But that 6-month window is what I would use as a parent, and trying to make sure my son or daughter had a passport that did not expire earlier than 6 months after they were returning from their program. Questions on flights. We have a service that helps with flights, but we don't actually book or get involved in the flights, right? So there again, you might, with the online services, the airlines have really disrupted their travel plans and have limited flights. We suspect, I suspect in particular, that we're going to see airlines begin to add flights back as we get the vaccine rolled out and as certain countries start to get things under control. I meant to mention at the beginning of the conversation what we are talking about at CIEE and the way I speak with my own family. All of us would love to see COVID behind us and 2020 to be in the rearview mirror, but the reality is that it's likely to get a little stickier. It's likely to get a little more challenging in January, February, March of this year for the reasons we all know. Lots of communities, lots of individuals let their guard down. Groups try to come back together, and we had lots of gatherings and Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas and the holiday season, New Year's. And we're seeing it. We see it all over the world. When groups let their guard down, it doesn't matter if it's Korea or Japan or Ireland, all real cases, recent cases where restrictions were loosened and the spike in COVID occurred. So we suspect that it's going to happen like that. It's happening here in the US. We suspect that that's going to be what we read about for the next month or two, but also we expect that things will brighten significantly in the March, April, May timeframe, which leaves us positive and optimistic about the summer. So just wanted to leave you with that personal comment that I would not get concerned if you read headlines next week that certain countries are struggling there's a pretty long track between now and the summer, and we think things will be in really good shape by then.
Great. Well, there's still a ton of questions in the chat box, but I think what we're going to do is we'll take time tomorrow to write answers to all of your questions and reach back out to you with some responses. We have recorded this webinar, so we'll send that out as well. I know some people are asking if they missed the beginning, will it be sent out? And we can also send out a link to the HRI index bill. Someone was asking how to find that, so we can include that in our follow-up email tomorrow. Any other final comments, Matt or Bill?
No, I mean, stay tuned to this channel as we move forward and the world continues to unfold, and we continue to make sure that we can support your students and make sure this works. And if we can, we will. And we'll let you know what the issues are when there are issues. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in. We're excited that you're here. Almost 500 people were here at one time. That's an amazing demonstration of interest and support, and we're excited that you're excited. Thank you.
I want to say thanks to Lara and Matt and Bill for being so competent and so expert in all that you do and answering these questions. And to everyone on the call, it's an amazing experience. It will change your life. It will change your son or daughter's life. It will prepare them well for college and beyond. And we know more than ever, we need leaders, whether they're leaders of families or organizations or groups who have a global perspective. So in addition to being really fun and really exciting, and one of the questions was, am I going to meet other students? Absolutely. The high school away program had students from 12 different US cities in a foreign city just last month. You'll meet many students from across the country, and you'll meet many locals that will change your perspective and develop new friendships that'll last a lifetime. So hang in there, walk with us through these next few months of uncertainty, but know that we're very confident that we're going to be able to host you because, as I say, we're doing it right now with hundreds of students, and we look forward to supporting you. And we think the class is going to be over 1,000, maybe 2,000 students this summer. So hang in there, send us any additional questions, and we'll do our best to answer the questions that are in the chat box. Take care.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.